Okay, that should that should clear things up. Getting the audio taken care of, and I think we're good to go. So let me check a final thing, everyone. Uh, just want to be sure the sound is okay. All right. So this is vlog day 4 of 100. So I hope this will make content creation easier later down the line. And I have one student that is joining us as well. So just gonna begin talking about the day. Uh, Started with teaching a meditation class at 7, and then I taught one at 11, and then I was a moderator for one at 3, and then I taught another one at 4, and then I was the MC for an event at 5. So it's a pretty it was a pretty packed day. Um, actually, the 7 a.m. classes are not very easy. I definitely have to work on getting to sleep at an earlier time, at a more reasonable time. So I wonder if this is it possible to share this in the group chat? If anyone if anyone is anyone from the group chat is here, put it if it's possible to put it in the group chat. I think it is, but I don't have a link on my end. But in case there's anyone awake on the other side of the world that wants to tune in. Yeah. So today is Puja Kalprat. So in the Dhammakaya tradition, they have this ceremony that they do the first Saturday. It's actually the first Sunday of every month in Thailand, but over here it's on a Saturday night, but it's Sunday morning over there. The Dhammakaya temple has been doing this food offering to the Buddhas every month for since they founded the temple in the late 70s, I believe. Oh, my sister's cat almost fell. Yeah, in Theravada Buddhism, there are some different perspectives on what nirvana actually is. So different parts of the canon describe it as a couple things or a variety of particular things. So, for example, in some suttas or in some segments or passages, will say that nirvana is the end of greed, hatred, anger, delusion, lust, all the defilements. Those being ended while still being alive is nirvana, and then the after death condition for a being like that is also nirvana. Other passages refer to it as a deathless, unconditioned. So a in some places people draw the conclusion that it's a kind of um, unconditioned, luminous mind. In one sutta, the Pali word is vinyanam anidasanam. That's used, and it's not used anywhere else in the canon. So it's not exactly. Some people don't consider it reliable. But generally speaking, nirvana is described as either the end of defilements, a particular unconditioned reality or an unconditioned non-reality that if you were to experience it, you wouldn't experience anything. There'd just be a cessation of consciousness. That's one perspective, and a less common perspective that happens to be the perspective of my temple that they adhere to based on practitioner experience and realization of the lineage holders is that nirvana is actually a dimension. So the Pali word for dimension or sphere is ayatana. So every first Saturday, every first Sunday of the month, the temple puts together this mass meditation where a bunch of people come and they sit and they make donations and they make offerings, and the offerings are um, dedicated to the Buddhas in ayatana nirvana, nibbana. And that portal or that way to make the offerings reach them is through um, the practitioners of the temple or the masters of the temple that have attained Dhammakaya and are able to have that gateway open. So that ceremony happened today. I was the master of ceremonies for it, so I led the chanting in English, or at least the help people know which part of the chanting to do. And an announcement was made at the temple actually that the abbot of my temple has given a direct order to everyone to enter this kind of training period. So if you're a monk and you decide to volunteer and enter, you need to meditate like a minimum of 4 hours a day, and you're supposed to report this to like one of your senior monks. And that if you're anyone else who's just like layperson or you live a busy life, that during this time please meditate 2 hours a day. Probably, most likely, because of the it seems the situation with Ukraine and Russia. So can't remember the last time the abbot actually told everyone to meditate more. Um, I don't even know if he did this or if he asked people to do that during the beginning of the coronavirus. So um, yeah, so more people at the temple will certainly be meditating during this time, myself included. The It's interesting. Dhammakaya is my main meditation practice, but as far as Dhammakaya practices is concerned, my level of development is not very high. But in terms of Zen or other traditions, when I describe the particular when I describe this stuff, like the videos that I've been making, um, it's definitely indicative of development. But in Dhammakaya, they have the meditations a specific visualized object inside the body, and like the first step of the practice is absorption jhana to the level where the physical body you actually transfer. You go from this body to a subtle body and to subtler and subtler bodies until you reach enlightenment bodies. And even just to get to that first subtle body in samadhi and enter the first jhana, I've practiced this meditation for 12 years and I haven't done it, haven't been able to do it, at least not with stability. So that's Dhammakaya, and that's actually the tradition that really introduced me to meditation, and everything really started at Dhammakaya. It's really my home and my root lineage, despite all the things that I've learned elsewhere and practices that I've done. And when I ordain, I'll be with Dhammakaya. So let me check for the questions. Are there any questions? Looks so pensive in that thumbnail. It's too late. Okay. The One of the things that was suggested was that as this as these OBEs begin to start rolling, that I should consider like a focus group just for the OBEs and the lucid dreams. And some students in my class suggested that. And it's interesting because I'm doing that for a group of younger students, like much younger. So that's something to consider. Um, that would probably be very useful, actually, since this is gonna be starting any moment now. The OBEs. So, question: what is keeping you from further development in Dhammakaya? I think for me, Dhammakaya has always been the most difficult practice of all of them for me. I heard this from a long time. I heard this a long time ago too from a teacher named William Beaudry. He said the meditation practice that's the best for you is the one that's the hardest. I didn't. I was like, huh. I thought that was interesting. And then over the years, I could see that really is the case. So, but I think when it comes to Dhammakaya, probably consistency is the main thing. Like, maybe some people are just lucky and they don't need to practice it as much, but I've found that, like Dawn Berry, one of my instructors, she said, yeah, if you really want to do this meditation to the point where you can enter jhana and start to enter the inner bodies, you have to do it like 2 hours a day, and then gradually that will lead to that kind of unfolding. Dhammakaya is not in my opinion and in my experience of it over the years, the meditation is not defined by perceptual shifts in the same way that awakening is, that I've undergone. Dhammakaya is really like, it's like a superpower. You're able to meditate in this body. It becomes so still. The jhana arises at the center of the body, and then you're absorbed in it, and you move from one body to the next. So it's really very very deep stillness, and it's very much on the samatha side of the Buddhist practice. Whereas, although I've practiced a lot of samatha, it's interesting. Although I've practiced a lot of Dhammakaya and a lot of concentration type practices, all of my unfoldings are on the insight column, on the insight side, the perceptual shift side of the equation. So, and I've done long retreats for Dhammakaya too. I've done 6 month. I did 9 months like a couple of years back. I did 2 months over the summer, and for some reason, like the blocks are just. It's interesting. The practices that I'm best with are the ones that you don't have to do anything. Those are the practices that are actually hard for most people. Like most people, a lot of people don't like Zen because you're not doing anything, and they have this idea that they have to do something. And Dhammakaya, it's like you visualize an image while you're still not doing anything. So it took me many years to really get to the point where I am now in the practice. And I think from where I am now, if I just did some time in silence, or I did a 1 month retreat or something, or really just like locked myself away in a room, could could enter some very very deep stillness. But for me, even like, I think I did a retreat in December. It was like 9 or 10 days, and that was pretty good. Yeah, I would say that was a very fortuitous retreat. But there was still initial. I let myself get distracted. I was reading too much the first like 5 days, even though I wasn't talking. Or like at some point, I just completely unplugged from the computer, and I like didn't look at a clock for a few days. I didn't know when I went to bed. I didn't know what time I was waking up. No clue. The only way I knew, like, of course I could see the sun or that it was night, but I wouldn't look to figure out like where the sun was. So it was just a complete disconnect from time. So that was really useful. But I've found that when I've done Dhammakaya retreats, like when I ordained over the summer, yeah, this like striving comes up. As maybe from the early years, the striving comes up. That's totally not there when I do other practices or when I just rest in awareness. But I've done Dhammakaya, a lot of it. I teach it every weekend, and I still do it at least some every day. So it's different now, even compared to over the summer. There's not really a lot. There's not a lot of striving, and it's actually very, very natural. But it requires that the mind stops wandering completely. That's one of the things too. When the mind completely becomes still and the factors of absorption completely come to their fruition, that's when you really vanish into the center of the body and you appear in another body that's nestled at the center. It's called the We call it the astral body. In Dhammakaya, they call it the Dhammakaya, so the dream body. Go from one body to the next in perfect stillness, imperturbable, no mind wandering. So you can see how the standard, the level of stillness required for this is is very unique. So I think even high level practitioners of other traditions and that have very refined insights and like perceptual shifts, if they just aren't wired for that kind of stillness, it may be difficult for them to have like what's considered attainment level progress in Dhammakaya. And I've definitely met people that have attainment level progress, um, but I don't know if they've undergone the same perceptual shifts that I see in other traditions as well. I haven't been able to ask. Um, I learned from a monk who did a 10-year retreat, but I never asked. I was never able to really ask him about non-duality or what his moment to moment experience of life was like because I wasn't experiencing it um, with stability back then, so I didn't really have a basis to ask him about it. But yeah, good question to ask one of my mentors actually. What the kind of unfolding I'm having, how that fits into their model or their map and understanding of things. It may not fit in it at all. It may not be related at all. That's certainly possible. So reading this question again, what's keeping you further from development in Dhammakaya? Anything else? Yeah, I think it's easy to get sidetracked, even for me. So like when I get sidetracked, it's like sidetracked into infinity, It's like everything's infinite and empty. So if I go into like, for this 5 days, I'm only gonna do Dhammakaya. It's like you're doing Dhammakaya, Dhammakaya, and then like suddenly this like infiniteness starts to open up and like you like let yourself rest in that a little too long and then it like disperses your concentration or your stillness and then you gotta come back to the center of the body and then it's like this whole thing. So I think with any practice when you really want to go in and you just want to work on that one specific practice, like even if there's a tendency to have expansiveness or to have non-duality, you gotta let it go and then just do the practice. So when I was in Thailand, I really did just Dhammakaya over the summer, and yeah, but because I was in the retreat conditions, I had the whole like, oh, you only have a month here. You have to like go hard, and that never works. It doesn't just doesn't work. doesn't work. So you're going hard for like 3 weeks, and then the fourth week you finally let up because it finally dawns on you that it's not working. But then by that point, you only have a week left, right? So that's what that was like. And I haven't done a retreat, a Dhammakaya retreat, or like 2 days or 3 days of practice um, since that retreat in December. And even then, that was only like 30 days after the collapse of the subject and object split that happened at the end of Thanksgiving. So literally 30 days after that, I'm on a retreat. And that whole thing was so fresh and new, so it was very glamorous. But now it's not. Now it's just normal. So this is actually the opportune time to do more of this particular practice, especially because the abbot asked and said that more purity, more merit, more energy and awareness is needed at this time to send the merits and the blessings to the war torn areas. So that was a super long answers. Apologize about that. A lot of people don't know what Dhammakaya is. What is the difference between this and regular mindfulness meditation, and why are you more drawn to this than other modalities? Um, so Dhamma means truth, Kaya means body. So Dhammakaya is a practice where a person enters successively refined mind bodies until they enter the truth bodies, which are called the Dhammakayas, or the bodies of enlightenment. So, in this rediscovery and this tradition that came out of Thailand, the founding monk and the his successor, a nun. The monk was named Lung So. The successor was named Kunyai Achan, which means grandmother teacher. Um, they discovered that the four levels of enlightenment in Theravada Buddhism actually exist as attainable bodies, uh, and that those bodies possess in of themselves the various supernormal powers that the Buddha attained. So Dhammakaya is defined by that. It's actually a practice that has to do with entering these inner bodies and discovering really this multi-dimensional aspect, or this multi-dimensional nature of our existence. Like, we have one body here, it's physical. If you've ever had an out of body experience, there's an astral body, but there are bodies beyond these. And that's the point of the Dhammakaya practice, not necessarily to like enter them and um, like go into them the same way that you would in a lucid dream or in an out of body experience, but to uh, enter them in really, really perfect stillness. And then once the actual Dhammakaya is attained, then there's things that can be done that are considered super normal, um, going to other realms and all this stuff. So a good example is I met a monk once uh, in the early days when I was first going to the temple, and uh, he knew that I had just gone to Myanmar and to Burma, and that I was practicing the Mahasi style noting, which is based on the commentaries of the Buddhist canon. So there's 16 stages of insight that begin to unfold as you do their specific kind of practice, and those 16 stages culminate in uh, it's called path and fruition, or experience of cessation. Your consciousness blips out, you experience the unconditioned. So that's their map. Dhammakayas is different because they say nirvana is a dimension, and that there is a true self actually. So it's quite uh, unorthodox, even heretical. to some Theravadins and Buddhists. So he told me, yeah, if you want to keep doing the Mahasi, if you want to keep doing that type of practice, vipassana, you could definitely still become a stream enter, or you can still become enlightened. Um, he's like, but if you practice Dhammakaya, you'll be able to see your father again, and you'll be able to explore the universe and travel to various realms and discover the truths about this life and about this reality. So Dhammakaya is more aimed at omniscience. It's aimed at enlightenment, but also omniscience, because of the supernormal powers that begin to unfold and that are inherently in that system and in that practice, just at the very high stages. So the difference is that with Zen and with um, non-duality, non-dual teachings, um, the the perceptual shifts unfold in my experience. They unfold uh, quicker. It's like, I mean, it depends on the practitioner, but the number of people who have attained Dhammakaya, like I've only met like I don't know 3 in person, 3 or 4, and the temple has a large number of them, but they're all like in an area where they're just meditating like 10, 14 hours a day, and it seems that it's like for them it's really like boiling water, and you're boiling water for a while, and then boom, the water starts boiling. You're heating it up for a while, and then it starts boiling. Dhammakaya is like that. When I read Kunyai John's biography, it was like she practiced meditation 2 to 4 hours or however long for a couple years, and then boom, she attained Dhammakaya. All these powers and abilities just instantly manifested when she was able to enter the Dhammakaya body, and she was able to find her father being tormented and trapped in the lower realms, and even able to find her like departed farm animals and stuff like that. So that would not be possible through dry insight vipassana, because the basis to be able to see those things is the supernormal power, is the attainment of that body which has faculties that are far beyond this physical one. But why am I drawn to it more than standard mindfulness? I'm not, it's interesting. My motivations now and how I approach things now are different. Like, for example, I used to want to become a monk to become enlightened. But now it's like I'm becoming a monk because that's just what Ryan's supposed to do. It's like the caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It's not so much that there's actual the same it's not the same motivations are not there the way that they used to be, because of the perceptual shifts. Like I don't see human beings, or I don't see beings as real. I don't see anything as real. I don't actually think that if you put on robes and you take an initiation, that you're somehow holier than other people. Like a lot people would say I'm crazy to say that, and I'm like anti-Buddhist to say that. But I don't actually see monastics as actual beings, just like I don't see ordinary beings as actual beings. I don't see things in that through those kinds of perceptions anymore, because of the unreality of the nature of my experience. So, like, I'm becoming a monk because that's just what needs to be done. It's like dictated that that's what will happen, or that was what is going to happen. It doesn't matter whether I want it to be that way or not. That's just how it's going to be. Um, so that being said, the motivations are different. It's the same way with Dhammakaya. Like, I'm not particularly drawn more to all the super normal stuff that I just talked about. I'm not more drawn to that than I am to the kind of perceptual shifts that are more characteristic um, of Zen or not or non-dual teachings or Prajnaparamita teachings. I used to be, in the beginning, I was much more drawn to the Dhammakaya stuff. Later, much more drawn to the Prajnaparamita teachings, Mahayana teachings. But now it's like, yeah, it's more like this equalness of things and of teachings, and I really see the value in in each vehicle and in each school. And when it comes to the perfection of wisdom, the Prajnaparamita teachings, those really reflect the perceptual shifts that are unfolding. So that's why I'm reading more of them at this time. But it doesn't mean I wouldn't read the Pali Canon, and I do plan on reading the entirety of it. So yeah, mindfulness to me, mindfulness is freaking incredible. It's like absolutely miraculous because it's just paying attention to the nature of experience, and the nature of experience as it arises or as it is, for me, is incredible. so so I don't actually see, like, mindfulness is lower somehow than like all the super normal stuff. Like, it's not. I don't see a basic mindfulness walk in the garden as any less incredible or less profound than an out of body experience. I certainly used to feel that way for years, but when the perceptual shifts and the awakening really began to unfold, that kind of, it's like the validity and the reality of value judgments became illusory. I just stopped. I was like, oh, it's actually the mind. It's the mind that's saying, or it's thought that is saying that this is more important than that, or this is more spiritual than that, or this is closer to Dharma or divinity than that is. And it's all absolutely, I mean, how could I know any of that? How could I know that a walk down the street is any more or less important than an out of body experience? So I used to have OBEs, and I would have contact with these deities or beings and put that like way up on a pedestal, like wow, right? But now it's just not any different than regular life. So, and that's probably why a lot of that unfolds very easily for me, because I just see it as opening another door as easily as like opening that door, on the other side of the room. It's just that when you open it and you go in there, the environment looks different, and the people in there, the beings in there may look different. But yeah, there's a kind of equality or kind of equanimity and evenness with all of experience. Like, it's all equally miraculous, whether it's here or whether it's there, or anywhere. It's all, yeah, it's all incredible. Adyashanti described it pretty well. He said like some quote about enlightenment in a teacup or something, or like profundity of reality in a single sip of tea. And I would say that's pretty, yeah, that's very spot on. That's very accurate. Um, the taste of food is the same way that I taste the memories of myself or the memories of my former self. Like every person feels a certain way in the field of perception. So like when I'm hanging out with one person, my best friend feels differently than my mother. It's like just a sense of that person's personality. And this is characteristic for every single person or every single, certainly living sentient beings in my experience. And there's a sense of how they feel, but there's also a sense of how uh, the personality structure feels. Like, if I woke up in someone else's personality, I would sense that that felt different than how this feels. So I can't say that my sense of self or my personality is like completely extinguished. It's just very like it's like a scent compared to what it used to be. And that scent or that taste is no different than the other things that I taste, you know? It's no different than the coffee that I had this morning or the sweet potato fries. Whereas before, like my sense of self and my personality is like all that existed, is all that mattered. The story is all that mattered. But now I don't even think of my life in terms of a story anymore. Uh, I've just been talking about the past a lot because I got to get this book out. I have to get the chapters of my life out because when I ordain, I can't talk about this anymore. And I know that it's useful for people to see what it was like even now, how it's unfolding, and what it was like in the years that passed, and the different experiences that I had. Like when I read Journeys Out of Body, um, Far Journeys and Ultimate Journeys, Robert Monroe just described the experiences that he had. That's all he did. He just described the things that happened to him. He described the experiences. He described the beings. He described what they showed him. He described what he learned from the things that they showed him. And he described learning and viscerally experiencing through out of body uh, more about what he calls his total self. Like in the sutras, it'll say, for example, the so and so attained the knowledge of his former existences. And it'll describe what that person was like in his former existences or her former existences. So the Buddha has the Jataka tale. So these are all the past lives account of the Buddhas, of Shakyamuni Buddhas, the historical Buddhas, former existences. And I've heard other people talk about, recalling past lives, mostly in the context of past life regression. But in Ultimate Journeys, you actually see you. I mean, you read the description of how it was that he saw his parallel lives, his past existences, and his future existences all happening at the same time. Like there was no actual past or future lives. Like there was just all these lives in this matrix that were all happening at the same time. So I'm not going to describe what it was that he actually saw, how that experience unfolded, but I'd never seen a description like that. I'd never seen someone say, this is how that specific insight, how that specific supernormal experience or knowledge was attained. It just says saw past lives, or you know had a vision of former existence. I think the most at one point I heard was like someone came out of the fourth jhana and then had the intention to see their former existence, and then they went back to like when they were 5, and like rewinding a tape, they went through various memories and into like the womb, and then the last moment of their former life. Like that's pretty precise, that is juicy, that's awesome. And that's what I think, that's what is so incredible, to read the actual like personal firsthand accounts of all of this. As much as I take and really consider the scriptures and the original text, I can't help but just absolutely fall in love with the personal firsthand accounts of people undergoing spiritual awakening and going through this process themselves. So when Bob described the recollection of his past parallel and former existences in what he calls the mainframe, I mean, or something like that. Yeah, I think I pulled over. That's how like blown away I was getting. I literally just had to stop driving and just listen to what he was saying. It was that profound. So so I think this vlog and a lot of um what will be unfolding in the next 100 days, and even with the book is actually inspired by him. Yeah, actually inspired by far journeys and ultimate journeys, particularly. And yeah, I think in earlier days I tried to like make videos about this stuff, but always stopped. But this past year with teaching all of you and with the classes, it's really given me a reason to be consistent, you know? Because otherwise I could just like bask in this and be lazy. But now that there's all of you that actually want to hear the stories, I'm obligated, and I definitely want to share them. Because before, like putting it on YouTube was like, eh, you know. But sharing it in a way that really shows people that it's possible. Like that's actually the main motivation. Like I don't it's not so important actually. The out of body experience is um not nearly as important to me than understanding emptiness, understanding non-duality, understanding nature of mind, attaining Dhammakaya. That's really like the most important stuff. And that's really what the main emphasis of my practice and my unfolding has been. But as a side effect of all of that, all of this crazy interdimensional stuff has happened. And I don't think it means nothing. I suspect it's part of a story. It's part of a story, even though I'm not particularly attached to the story or to the outcome. It's still part of a tapestry and a story that even I don't completely understand yet. I don't know why I met this alternate parallel universe version of my dad. I still don't know why I had that. I don't really know why that out of body experience happened where I was in that other dimension with those, blue extraterrestrial interdimensional beings. I don't know why after training for 1 year with that teacher I met the first non-human entity in my life. I don't know why I continue to have dreams of things before they happen, or that one of those helpers will come to me and say that this particular friend is in distress or in trouble, or that this person is going to fall ill. I don't know why any of that happens. I mean, I can suspect why it happens, but I don't actually know why it happens. No idea. Awakening completely makes sense. Like, obviously, want to master meditation, want to teach it. That's the dharma of this particular body. That is the function of this particular life. But that doesn't require all of this strange parallel universe stuff. This shamanistic dimensional hopping wildness. It's just it just doesn't actually have to be there, but it's there. It's there. It's totally there, undeniably there, and it's certainly interesting, but it's unfolding. That's why I'm doing these videos for the next year and a half. I think a lot of these questions will be answered. A lot of the experiences that had happened, they'll begin to make more sense. So, oh, it's midnight. So, gonna end this now, and we'll get back to it tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. All right, take care. Oh, final. This is the quote that I referenced. Sitting with a cup of tea is as much awakening as the biggest experience that ever happened. Ajashanti. Yep. Sitting with a cup of tea is as much awakening as the biggest experience that ever happened. That's it. That's from I think End of Your World. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a good night.